In today's video, I'm going to be covering 4 simple things you can do to better control algae in your fish tanks. By applying the 4 things that I'll be covering in today's video, my tank went from looking like this, covered in algae, to looking like this, almost completely free of algae, in only about 2 weeks. And those 4 things are light, nutrients, live plants, and cleaner fish. Now, a lot of people, especially those new to the hobby, might think that cleaner fish are a one-stop shop for algae control, but unfortunately that's not the case. But they do have a role to play, and we'll discuss them more towards the end of this video. As you try to balance any of your aquariums, it's important to remember that algae is a plant, and like all plants, needs light and nutrients. Nothing will have more impact on the algae growth in your aquarium than the intensity and the amount of light that you provide. The amount and the intensity of light that you choose to provide to your aquariums should be based on your specific setup. For example, if you're running live plants in your aquarium, you'll likely need to give your plants somewhere in that range of 8 to 12 hours of light each day. If you're not running any live plants, then you may be able to reduce the time that you have your light on only to the hours that you're going to be spending around your tank enjoying it. We'll talk a bit more about live plants later on in this video. But in general, here's a couple of quick tips that should help you to figure out the best lighting situation for your tank. My first tip would be to put your lights on timers so that your lights go off and on at the same time each day. My second tip would be to just not overdo it with your lighting. You're much more likely to have an algae issue if you have a very high intensity light than if you were to go for kind of a low to medium light setup. One of the funnest things about owning a fish tank is feeding your fish. Everyone loves to feed your fish, to watch them go crazy eating the flakes or the pellets that you put into the tank. But it can be helpful to remember that because algae is an aquarium plant, it can only grow as much as the nutrients that you provide it. And when I say nutrients, I'm referring specifically to nitrates, which you can test for in your aquarium water. Ideally, you want to have less than 40 parts per million of nitrates in your aquarium at any given time. My suggestion here is to feed your fish only once per day. Most fish will do very well with a single feeding per day, but I do sometimes make exceptions for juvenile fish or for overly active fish. Live plants are a great tool you can use to help control the algae in your aquariums. The reason for that is because they actually help you with the nutrient problem. They compete directly with the algae by pulling nutrients out of the water that they can use to grow themselves. I would personally recommend using a variety of live plants and putting those in different areas of your tank. I've found floating plants to be especially effective though, not only because they pull nutrients directly from the water column, but also because as they float at the surface, they do a nice job at blocking some additional light. A lot of the times when people get into the fish keeping hobby, it's easy to pick up on this perception that there's these algae eating fish that the fish store employees will try to sell you that will solve all your problems and eat all your algae and make your tank look really nice. But often that's not the case. A lot of the time these fish that are commonly sold as algae eaters either aren't true algae eaters or grow way too big for most tanks, or both. A couple of good examples of these would be the common pleco or the Chinese algae eater. There are no fish in the aquarium hobby. They can do everything for you and remove the hard work of keeping your tank looking nice and maintained. But there are some fish that can do a nice job at helping in certain circumstances. My recommendation is always to start with things like lighting and nutrients and plants to help control algae first and foremost, and then maybe look to some algae eaters like certain fish or snails after that. If you do decide that getting algae eating fish or snails will be a good fit for your aquarium, I'd recommend picking those that you would enjoy having in your tank that would add something unique, that you don't want there just to eat algae, but that you enjoy in general. It's also important to keep in mind that some algae eaters that might be a good fit for one tank might not be a good fit for another tank. I'd recommend for smaller tanks things like nerite snails, mystery snails, or autocinclus that typically stay on the smaller side. And if your tank is a little larger, preferably 20 gallons or above, I've had some good experience with bristle-nosed plecos or rubber-lipped plecos. It's also very important to remember to have algae wafers on hand so that once these fish have done their job and have cleaned up the tank, that you can supplement their diet with algae wafers to make sure that they don't go hungry. I hope this information has been helpful for you. If it has, please consider leaving a like on the video. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave those in the comment section below. Thanks so much for joining, and I hope to see you on the next one.